Hello everyone, and welcome to the Biblical Bookworm. My name is Elizabeth, and today I'd like to talk about a topic that I get asked about a lot, namely how to read more spiritual books. I figured that it's the perfect time now to talk about this, since I imagine that many people consider making New Year's resolutions, and one of those resolutions might be to read more. And by the way, I'm sure that some things you'll hear in this video will surprise you. In this video, I'll answer two main questions. So the first one is why to read more spiritual books, so how to have the motivation to actually do it. And secondly, how to do that. So I'll touch up on topics like how to fit some books in your busy schedule. But before I start with that, it's important for me to begin this video with a sort of disclaimer, because the thing is, when I started my YouTube channel, I thought that it would mainly serve as a source of information and not inspiration. And I was surprised when people started telling me that they were inspired to read more through my videos. And as I'm responsible for the behavior I'm encouraging, the first thing I'd like to discuss in this video is to what degree reading spiritual books actually helps your spiritual development. And this might surprise you because, in all honesty, reading a book a week, so 52 books a year, has only a marginal benefit for one's spiritual development. I'll explain what I mean by that. It's important to understand what role spiritual books play in your spiritual life, and it's important to not over or underestimate that. And the truth is, there are way more important or powerful things than spiritual reading, like for example, prayer. One of the best known books by St. Alphonsus Liguori is called Prayer, the Great Means of Salvation and Perfection. And it's not called Reading, the Great Means of Salvation and Perfection. St. Alphonsus writes there that he who prays will be certainly saved, and who doesn't pray will be certainly damned. I've never seen someone write something even remotely similar to this about spiritual reading. St. Teresa of Avila used to say that he who neglects mental prayer needs no devil to carry him into hell because he brings himself there. And again, she wasn't talking about spiritual reading, but prayer. St. Catherine of Siena, who is a doctor of the church as well, was illiterate. So you don't even have to be able to read or write in order to become a saint, not even a doctor of the church. St. Carlo Acutis said that the Eucharist is the highway to heaven, and I've been thinking in what relation books are to that. So if the Eucharist is the highway to heaven, what are spiritual books? And I came to the conclusion that spiritual books are like stairs to heaven at best, and maybe not even that, maybe they're just a rope to heaven, you know? What I'm saying is spiritual books are definitely a possible way to heaven because they're definitely not bad or evil, but there are way more powerful means to get to heaven. The good thing about spiritual books is that they lead you to choose more efficient means because you're constantly given the advice to go to daily mass, practice mental prayer, pray the rosary, and so on. So if you need to read a book that tells you to do that, in order for you actually to start doing that, then yes, spiritual reading will be highly beneficial for you. But it's important to understand the hierarchy of different devotions, and if you aren't going to daily mass yet, maybe think of that as a New Year's resolution before you stuff every minute of your day with reading. There's even some danger associated with too much spiritual reading, which I've often read in spiritual books, and that is pride, because there's a certain temptation to take pride in the fact that you know more than others, or just to take pride in your knowledge in general. Obviously, there are also benefits to reading spiritual books, like, for example, the fact that it can help you make the right decisions. It also helps you understand your faith better and not be intimidated by someone asking critical questions about it. And last but not least, it gives you ideas on what to meditate on, for example, when praying the rosary. So there is no need to read a spiritual book a week, and probably reading a spiritual book a month is absolutely enough. Reading less books even has the benefit that you have more time to absorb the information that way. I read more because I like to. I love to acquire knowledge and process new information, and now also because I need fuel for my YouTube channel. But while doing this, I'm aware of all of the things I've just said in the first part of this video. This brings us to the motivation part of reading spiritual books. Let's say you want to read a couple of books a year and struggle with that because you have other priorities, or the books are boring or hard to understand, or you'd simply prefer to watch a movie instead. My best piece of advice here is read books that solve a problem for you or answer a question. This will keep you reading even when you're busy, because in this case, reading helps you increase the quality or efficiency of your life. The practical thing about this is that I'm sure every one of you has problems, and especially problems that can be solved with spiritual readings. That could, for example, be scrupulosity, perfectionism, addictions, religious doubts, dryness in prayer, discernment of your vocation, or a habitual sin. First, you need to identify a problem you have. Again, I'm convinced that this part doesn't pose any major difficulties to anyone. And then try to find the best book that solves your problem. That book will naturally be interesting to you. You could also read a book because it treats a problem someone else has and you'd like to help them. Or it could be that you have a question that no one seems to be able to answer. In my experience, there are good answers to most faith-related questions, and just because you can't find anyone who is able to answer it, doesn't mean you have found an unanswerable question. It means that you have to do your own research. Now, let me give you a few examples on how the problem solving could look like. Let's say you have scrupulosity, you're constantly panicking about having committed a mortal sin, you're worrying that you can't be forgiven, or you're doubting that God loves you. A great book I know would be I Believe in Love. Another example, let's say you experience dryness in prayer, you don't feel any love for God, and you doubt whether He exists, or if He exists, whether He still loves you. A great book here is The Dark Night of the Soul by St. John of the Cross. I'll probably make a video about that one next Lent. For religious doubts, check out my playlist on apologetic books. I could name countless examples like that. If you don't know what book matches your problem or your question, ask a priest or pray about it. Maybe the answer will pop in your head, or you'll be gifted a book that addresses just that. If you're not someone who likes to read a lot, maybe don't start with books that everyone recommends and that are universally accepted as must-reads, like, for example, The Story of a Soul, Confessions by St. Augustine, or The Imitation of Christ, unless those books actually fit your personal needs. I'd like to quote Father Mark Goring here, who wrote this in his response email to my question, what 3 to 5 books he would recommend for everyone, back then when I made a video about book recommendations by Catholic YouTubers. And so he wrote, in terms of the 3 to 5 books, this is such a hard question since it depends where a person is at or what they're looking for. I absolutely agree. The best spiritual book in the world doesn't have to be the best spiritual book for you and your current needs. I really encourage you to use my videos as a reference to test whether the book would be interesting to you before you buy it. And now we get to the question how to read. So how to find the time for reading. And maybe you've heard someone say before that your day has 24 hours. You sleep for 8 hours, you work for 8 hours, you work out for 1 hour maybe, eat and get ready, which let's say takes you 2 hours in total. So you're left with 5 hours of free time. The thing here is that this isn't entirely true, in my opinion, because in those 5 excess hours, you're tired and likely unable to do any productive work. So I'm not going to tell you that you're wasting 5 hours every day and that it's possible to use all that time for spiritual reading, because that's simply not the reality. Maybe you're not working 9 to 5, so you might have even less time left. I totally get that, and I'd like to propose a solution. You see, if you're thinking that my spiritual reading sessions consist of me lighting a candle, turning on some Gregorian chant, and sitting comfortably on my couch, you're wrong. I almost exclusively read by listening to audiobooks, and so my spiritual reading happens mainly in the gym, while cleaning or cooking, on walks, or whenever I'm using public transport. That's the only way I'm able to read that much. In fact, when it comes to actual books in paper form, I struggle to read even, let's say, 2 a year, because I simply don't have the time to sit somewhere and read. Also, I listen to my audiobooks at the highest speed that I'm still able to understand. And by the way, if you're wondering if this is reverent enough to listen to spiritual books on, let's say, double speed, I'd like to say that Father Mike said in one of his first episodes of the Bible in a Year that there is nothing wrong with listening to the Bible on double speed, so I trust him with that. A common stumbling block for reading spiritual books I've observed is that people want to understand every single thing and every single sentence they read in a book. That's not necessary, and with audiobooks not even possible, I'd say, because when you're reading yourself, you can pause and reread each sentence as often as you feel the need to, while audiobooks continue automatically, and you'd have to click pause and repeat each time you want to hear something again. And that's just way too tiring. Father Mike once said in an interview that he prefers audiobooks exactly for that reason, because when he would read the paper version, he would be stuck forever with sentences he doesn't fully understand. It's not necessary to understand everything, and an audiobook gives you the opportunity to focus on the bigger picture. So what I'm trying to say is experiment with different formats and find what works for you. I know that some people hate audiobooks, so maybe for those people, ebooks would be a good option. And by the way, money can't be an excuse either, because there's a ton of ebooks and audiobooks online for free. Also, accept the fact that reading doesn't always have to be pleasant, especially starting to read a book, getting in the flow of reading might often require willpower, because you might prefer to watch a movie and not be in the mood for reading at that moment. That happens. Usually, once you start reading, it's easy to keep reading. The beginning is always the most challenging part. Just make books as accessible as possible to make that starting process easier. For example, you could place a book on a shelf in your bathroom because, let's be honest, you might get so bored on a longer toilet session that you'd read the ingredients list of an air freshener. Why not use that eagerness to read for something actually useful? That's been it for today. I hope you liked the video. I hope it was helpful. See you next week. God bless and bye!